There's an interesting tweet that I saw from Jack Posobiec. I saw it from Luke Rudkowski. I saw it from Mike Cernovich. The 10 stages of genocide. Have you seen this graphic at all? Have you seen it? All right. So Jack Posobiec said, assess. And it's a graphic that has 10 steps. And it says the 10 stages of genocide. Let me read them. Number 1, classification. People are divided into us and them. Number 2, symbolization. People are forced to identify themselves. Number 3, discrimination. People begin to face systematic discrimination. 4, dehumanization. People equated with animals, vermin, or diseases. 5, organization. The government creates specific groups to enforce the policies. 6, polarization. The government broadcasts propaganda to turn the populace against the group. 7, preparation. Official action to remove and relocate people. 8 is persecution. The beginning of murders, theft of property, trial massacres. 9 is extermination, wholesale elimination of the group. It is not extermination, and it is extermination and not murder because people are not considered human. And 10 is denial. The government denies it has committed any crime. So Mike Cernovich shared this. Many people are sharing it, and they're asking where you think we are. Mike Cernovich's post said 6.5, just before 7, that we are just about to see official action to remove and relocate people. I saw many people responding to the meme saying they think we're at between 6 or 7. I'm not entirely sure I'm convinced. I think people might be really hyping things up. Like I understand there's like a lopsided justice system right now. I understand there's problems, but to say we're just about to see official action to remove a group of people, I think that's going a little bit too far from a lot of these personalities. I mean, what do you guys think?
Somewhere between 3 and 6. We didn't form an organization to take care of these
Capitol
people.
Police.
Well, that was already formed. They're expanding it
into. They're becoming a new intelligence agency, and they're going nationwide.
Right.
That's
why I said between, because it's not officially a new organization to do that. It's
that's
just
semantics, bro.
Come on, a current organization.
That's semantics.
Like they didn't build the Republican Extermination Fund or anything.
Do you know what the Secret Service is tasked with doing?
I have no idea.
Tracking counterfeit U.S. dollars. Did you know that?
No.
What did you think they did?
Guarded the president's life.
That's right. Because that was
dude. The Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is like the biggest weapons program on earth.
I learned that in Wild West. That's where I learned that fact about the
Secret
Wild
Service.
West. Yeah.
Yeah, they did. It was counterfeiting.
Yeah,
and
with Will
so,
Smith, great movie.
so of course, I say that's a semantic argument. The argument put forth by Mike Cernovich was the Capitol Police are becoming a local police, a federal police agency just for the DC, but now they're going to operate out of California, Florida. Look, man. You see these things, and I talked about this in Chicago. They'll knock the whole building down except for just the facade and claim it's the same building. But everybody knows it's not the same building. So the law is so long as one wall stands, it legally is. So the floors are different, the size is different, and it's like a weird looking building with this tiny like 2-story front brick frame, and there's a steel building behind it or something ridiculous. So anyway, but I don't completely disagree with you, Ian. You know, it's a broad stretch to say between 3 and 6. So the first thing I'll point out is classification. Obviously, we're all divided between us and them in a lot of different ways. The left, the right, the far right, whatever. Who's being forced to identify themselves? Is anybody forced to do anything?
I'm not that worried. I mean, this is America.
Forced.
I think we'll figure it out.
They've got the pronouns in the Twitter bio, but it's not for some organizations might fire you if you don't identify your pronouns.
I think that's more the question here is like, it's not your actual physical well-being more so as it's like your ability to operate in polite society,
right? As,
you know, somebody who's like, you know, if you lose PayPal, if you lose any access to banks and stuff like that, I mean,
you heard about what's going on, right? There was an announcement from PayPal working with the ADL to weed out extremist transactions. And then Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter announced that they're going to be targeting, they say attacker manifestos and the far right, including the Proud Boys content. So Proud Boys content is now like to be purged. So they're not just talking about censorship now, they're talking about financial restrictions and censorship. And they're playing this game of the far right. So all that needs to happen is a long enough campaign where enough media outlets call you far right, and then they can say, oh, but look, it's here, he's far right, everyone knows it.
Someone, I think it was a Democratic politician, tweeted out that people were vermin. Did you guys see that last week?
Bro, they say maggots all day.
Yeah, maggots and vermin, that's the dehumanization and then the extermination. It's not murder if they're rats, you know? That's
maggots.
But don't concerning. You think if so, like, I mean, I've had both experiences, which is I've had reporters reach out to me about Kenosha, for example, and get totally like talk to them for hours and had them totally manipulate what I said, for their own agenda. But then I've also had, situations where like Huffington Post and a New Yorker article that just came out by Paige Williams. I talked to her at length, and she didn't put that qualifier right-wing Daily Caller in there. And I talked to her afterwards, and she said, yeah, because, I talked to you, and, you...
Well, they're real journalists.
Yeah, so my point is that it's not like this monolith of just bad people in the corporate media. I think if you really make an effort to actually extend your hand and try to tell your truth to those people rather than just shutting yourself down and say, no, you have this agenda and I'm not going to talk to you. Sure, you might fall on your face a couple times and the Intercept might put a hit piece out on you.
This is funny.
At least you're trying, and I think some good comes of that.
The SPLC hit me up and asked for a statement. And so I wrote like a really long statement. And I was like, I genuinely think that Jack Dorsey's stated intention is to have basically everyone be on these platforms, even people we all kind of disagree shouldn't. We all kind of agree shouldn't be. Like there are free speech absolutists, but there's like certain things you shouldn't be posting on social media, like images of I'll leave it at that. And I was like, Jack Dorsey told me that his goal is immutable social media, that he wants to make blockchain social media so nothing can ever be taken down. And I'm like, bro, that's way over the top. Like, I'm not asking for that. I'm just like, let people have political opinions. You don't ban them for saying learn to code. He's like, nah, everything. I don't believe him. Or he doesn't have the power that people think he has in Twitter. But so this guy asks me, and I basically, gave him a full and honest opinion, and he calls me a far right reactionary. I'm like, bro, if you actually, and so what he did was, there's a clever thing that I think he did to avoid looking like he's lying. He put my statement as an external link instead of including it in the piece. Because then when you go to it, you're like, oh, this guy's kind of moderate. You know what I mean? Like he's not really far left or anything, but.
I think you tapped on a really important point right there, though, and that goes back to what we were saying about, are we at the point where, people are being identified as groups and, removed, like physically, no, but, and I like coach some like 20-somethings, Zoomers in hockey. And one thing I noticed is the degree to which you can say whatever you want to them in person. You can throw whatever words about you want and they won't really be fazed. But if somebody says something about them digitally, it's like it consumes them. Even if it's just in a Snapchat, even if it's in Instagram comments or whatever, because that lives forever. And so like if you Google whoever's name and this news outlet decides to say this, that's immutable. And until, something else becomes the top result, that's you.
Yeah, that's a big problem because what I've been looking at is say culture, politics is downstream of culture. Big popular, I think it was Breitbart quote. Mm-hmm. Then I realized that, culture is downstream of technology. So these technological algorithms that are supporting, rage trash bait, like they say Ian Crossland's a psychopath, and then that gets retweeted. So then that fortifies the algorithm, and then all of a sudden psychopath and Ian Crossland start showing up. That's why this digital statement is so much more powerful than a verbal statement, because it's feeding the technological problem.
Yeah. A good example is some Gizmodo article. This is really funny. The left has like one video clip of me they love to regurgitate because it's like the only real thing I guess they have, and it's from like a year and a half ago. And so Gizmodo wrote it up like a few months ago. And in this article where they take this clip, out of context, they claim Tim Pool's mostly right-wing audience. And then I'm like, what does that mean? Like, did you poll them? Do you know who the audience is? And then what happened was a couple other outlets regurgitated the article and said the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then someone put it on my Wikipedia. Yeah. Tim Pool's audience is mostly right-wing. Well, like, I guess, I don't know if it's still there or not. But in the talk section, you can see them saying like something about just because someone says it in an article doesn't mean it's true. And they're like, well, then three articles have all claimed it. So we're not the ones to investigate. If they say it's true, then we include it. And I'm like, none of these people have actually asked my audience who they are, what they believe. And the Trump supporters, like the diehard Trump supporters, really don't like me over like my reaction to Joe Biden winning the election. It's like, we did a poll and found I think the biggest group was libertarian. The plurality was libertarian, and then like Trump supporters, moderates, and then liberals, and there were even some progressives.
What about Kanye West voters?
Oh, that's like 70%. Like just everybody. No. But the point is, like, what does it mean to be right wing? Are libertarians necessarily right wing? Not necessarily. I mean, what happened to the left libertarians, of which made up most of the young people in like the early 2010s, who are now the anti-SJW types, the anti-woke.
It's certainly shifting. I mean, I think we're in the midst of a shift. So obviously it's kind of up in the air right now, and it's a question of where the chips will fall.
But what does left and right even mean?
Nothing, man. Nothing.
So here's the problem. You go to somebody and we had Steve Bannon here. Steve Bannon said he was far right, and I was like, Steve, you just said tax the rich.
No.
And he was like, well, I'm a populist, and I'm like, how is that far
that's why
right?
I've always been opposed to that kind of characterization. I mean, we have in America, because of the two-party system, we have a very binary way of like viewing our reality, and it's like growing up, I don't think it was that much of an issue. Like it was never like, oh, are you a Republican or a Democrat? And now it's like, where do you fall?
I think Jimmy.
What do you think of Donald Trump? Huh?
Well, if you like him, you're.
Do
far
you
right.
like him? How much do you like him?
He's a funny guy.
Make America great again.
Does
Do
that
you
coming
avow?
flu?
Do you avow January 6th?
A vow.
Yeah. Say it right now. Disavow.
I disavow.
That's my point, though. Is everything has to be a linchpin issue.
You know what the weirdest thing about online arguments is? It's like some leftists will come up and they'll be like, well, you complain about Black Lives Matter, disavow January 6th. And I'll go, I disavow January 6th. It was awful. It was really bad.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, and it's really funny right now because a lot of conservatives are saying my body, my choice over, vaccine stuff. And the left is like, hey, the pro-lifers have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm like, I've always been pro-choice, and I think my body, my choice pertains to all of it.
Oh,
Yeah.
snap.
And they don't argue with me about it because they're like, what do we say about that guy? He's consistent in his positioning.
How
I'm
dare
like,
he.
dude, it's because they don't understand what libertarian is, right? I'm not going to pretend to be like big L libertarian in any way. I'm just kind of like, I don't know, and you kind of should leave people alone, I guess.
But
And
you're right. I mean, it's a question of like cultural conservatism versus like, I would argue that, Trumpian conservatism has less of that cultural aspect of
Yes.
conservatism.
I don't think
even
Trump is
though
conservative.
He's like, can we honestly say, like, when 20 years ago was Trump like anti-abortion?
Nope.
He was a
No.
Democrat.
Not at all.
Yeah,
a wild
He was a
party
party
boy
boy.
right
Reform
there.
party. wasn't he?
Exactly.
Doing cocaine off of hookers.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
Crazy dude in the 80s.
The dude's not conservative. He's populist. And so he got a lot of new people into the Republican Party. But I want to go back to that SPLC thing. 'Cause I mentioned this before. I mentioned this the other day. When they refer to me as a reactionary and then show my full statement where I'm like, I said bigots have no place in polite society. Like bigots, homophobes, transphobes, racists have no place in polite society. He includes that and says that's reactionary. It's like, okay, what you're really saying is that you're an insurrectionist. The Southern Poverty Law Center, these organizations and these activists are insurrectionists who want a complete upheaval and overthrow of the U.S. government. Because reactionary are the people who oppose the revolution. So you can have leftist values. You can believe in the progressive social justice cause. But if you tell them they're wrong for wanting to burn everything to the ground, they'll call you a reactionary. I literally come out like several times a month talking with people about healthcare, and I'm like, I think we need universal healthcare. Like a basic level, maybe. I've leaned away from it a little bit because of the race-based vaccine rollouts. And my concern is that if we have government-based healthcare and then the racists take over, they'll make everything race-based and then withhold healthcare from people based on that's scary. But that's not left-wing. I can say tax the rich, not left-wing. What is it? Do you support the upheaval and overthrow of American culture, or don't you? Because if you like apple pie and baseball or whatever, you're a reactionary. You can believe in all of the good social justice stuff. You can make a documentary about blockbusting and redlining and racism. Doesn't matter. Will you support the revolution? Yes or no?
But don't you think to a certain extent, the quote unquote cultural revolution that you're referring to is mainstream now? Like, don't you think that the critique is now the mainstream insofar as like the majority of people think that about apple pie and baseball, that like, America is corrupt and America is doomed to be racist and terrible forever?
I look at the polling, and I think it's fair to say that the ultra woke make up a tiny percentage relatively, but it's growing. I think,
But in our media, I think it's a different story.
in the
Right.
media, it's like a 80%.
The
Yeah, it's
algorithms,
bad.
it's caught the
So I'm not talking
algorithm.
about like average everyday Americans, because traveling around the country,
Right,
that's not the case. But
I'm not so convinced because it's not necessarily. So look, I'm talking to my friend, and we're arguing about vaccine passports and requirements, stuff like that. I'll be light on the crux of the conversation because YouTube is ban happy, but suffice it to say, I said I don't trust the government blindly. I'll consider what they say and consider the source. You always consider the source. I don't trust big pharma. I don't. And I don't understand why the left has come out in favor of a massive for-profit venture to transfer tax funds to major pharmaceuticals
Yes.
instead of talking about real ways to help save lives through the healthcare system. That being said, I think vaccines are safe and effective. I absolutely do. And I have one thing I've absolutely stressed is that We've had like 360 million doses of the vaccine. VAERS is serious. One of the like the VAERS reporting is serious. One of the problems is that when you censor the conversation, you freak people out. So this guy is coming at me arguing that by simply telling people to go talk to their own doctor about what's right for them and make sure the doctor, because I genuinely believe it's the right thing to do because people could have allergies or whatever. He's like, well, you're scaring people. And I'm like, dude, when did you become the champion of big pharma?
Yeah, it's about the collective and not your individual decision.
And that's the ultimate point.
The benefit of the collective over the individual, and the primacy of the individual is the foundation. You know, the fact that every individual is inherited in the image of God. That's America right there.
Exactly my point. So to go back to what we were talking about before I got into that was the idea that there could be something so innately leftist. Stop giving taxpayer funds to for-profit pharmaceutical companies, and they actively defend it right now. Because their collective has formed a narrative that must be upheld at all costs.
That's why we're in a paradigm shift right now. Because the progressives are the corporatists now.
Right.
It's like my mom in the late 60s, early 70s in Washington, D.C., she was a progressive who was fighting against. And I had this conversation with her the other day, and I was just like, yo, Mom, like, what do you think about, like, these modern feminists, and she's like, it's, I can't say what she said because she's
not
so
family friendly,
and that's exactly what we're going back to what we were saying earlier, is the critique has become the mainstream, and so it's no longer revolutionary, and it's become stale, and guess what? Corporatized.
I don't think
it's like a corporate message now.
Wait. You mean the activists?
Yeah,
is mainstream.
Exactly. So I'm saying
I thought you were saying criticizing the woke was mainstream.
No. Well, not yet. But I think that we're in the midst of a shift right now. But all I'm saying is that when my mom was protesting in Washington, D.C., protesting the Vietnam War, that was very different from, I think that was a fringe portion of the society. It was the young people who thought one way. And now the corporations think just like those young people who are out in the streets. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.